He serves on the House Committee on Financial Services. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Michigan and his Juris Doctorate from Duke University. I assume he loves basketball. He, his wife, Kathy, of 25 years, and their 3 children live in Birmingham, Michigan. Please welcome Congressman Clyde.
I love Duke basketball and Michigan football. I never get confused. Thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to be here. Doctor, I found your comments about Germany and the Nazis very fascinating, and it's an important message to hear because history can and does repeat itself. So I apologize if your presentation was rushed because of members of Congress. We have a vote in about 15 minutes, but this is my 4th time here. I appreciate the invitation. It's great to be with you. I'm not running for re-election, so this will probably be my last time with you. But again, I appreciate all the hospitality and accommodations you've made. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank my legislative assistant, Mina Hanna. Mina has been a great partner over the last 4 years here on the Hill. He's probably become one of the most knowledgeable people on the Hill on issues relating to the persecution of religious minorities, and he's been a great ally as we've gone on this journey, and his expertise and knowledge has been so helpful. The issue before us today is why are the Copts who've been part of Egypt for 2,000 years treated as second-class citizens? Now, I'm encouraged by some of the things that are happening. President Sisi has made a number of positive statements on this issue. He's held a number of state funerals to honor Coptic martyrs. He's launched airstrikes against people that have retaliated or have attacked the Copts. He continues to challenge the religious establishment, and he has stood by his promise to rebuild the churches that were bombed by the Muslim Brotherhood in August of 2013. He frequently says, however, that all Egyptians are equal. So why is it that there are no Copts in senior positions in the Defense Department, in the Foreign Ministry, in the Intelligence Department, in the military? There are no Coptic governors, and most significantly, there are no Copts on the national soccer team. So let's be clear, the bias and bigotry continues, and we have more work to do. Now, there is some good news. President Trump and the Congress stands with Egypt in terms of their efforts to combat terrorism. I think Secretary Pompeo will be even a better Secretary of State in that regard than Secretary Tillerson was because of his knowledge and experience on the Hill. Also, recently, George Washington University did a diaspora study on the Copts and concluded that 95% of them still care about what happens in Egypt, and they love their country and they're patriotic. They just need a venue through which to put their efforts and their work to help the Copts around the world. Coptic priest ever to be a guest chaplain on the House floor, and I think Speaker Ryan enjoyed meeting him and spending time with him, and he did a wonderful job, and we have a great picture to remember that event. But I continue to devote our time to these efforts, and we do it not only because my district in Southeast Michigan has a strong and vibrant Coptic community, but also because it's the right thing to do. And so the United States stands with Egypt at the center of the Arab world in terms of combating the terrorism and the challenges of that region. I'm confident that we will all persevere and succeed. I look forward to continuing over the next 6 months my work on these issues, and again, it's an honor to be with you. And in my absence, my only recommendation to you is get a hold of Mina Hanna. Okay.
He grew up in the waning years of pre-communist Cuba. His family fled in January 1962 with the help of relatives in America. Congressman Cyrus became a star basketball player at Memorial High School and received a 4-year basketball scholarship from St. Peter's College. He went on to receive his master's at Middlebury College in Vermont. He's a teacher, a business owner, before entering public service. He probably served as mayor of West New York, in New Jersey from 1995 to 2006. Today, Congressman Cyrus serves on 2 committees, the Foreign Affairs and Transportation and Infrastructure. On the Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Cyrus is the ranking member of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee and is a member of the Europe and Eurasia Subcommittee. He resides in West New York with his wife Adrienne, and he is truly a longtime supporter of Coptic equality and previously participated in Coptic Solidarity's Policy Day. We are very grateful for his continued support. Please help us welcome Congressman Cyrus.
Well, good morning. Dave Trott is going to be missed. We worked very well together, and I wish him all the luck now that he's not running again for Congress. Nice to see you all again. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. It has been an honor to speak before this conference in years past, and I am pleased to join you once again to support efforts to uphold human rights for Coptic Christians in Egypt. I am proud to represent a district where Coptic Christians have been a strong part of the diaspora community. And as many of you know, Jersey City, New Jersey, is the home of the first Coptic church in America. And I know where it is. Over the years, the Coptic community has been an important partner in New Jersey. And the repeated attacks against the community in Egypt is an urgent issue requiring greater attention from both President El-Sisi and the international community. I am proud to have co-sponsored H.R. 673, expressing Congress' concern over the ongoing attacks against Coptic Christians in Egypt. I also pressed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at the recent Foreign Affairs hearing on the administration's commitment to working with the Egyptian government to ensure the protection of Coptic Christians and all religious minorities in Egypt. However, congressional action is not enough. It is imperative that the international community also remain engaged with Egypt and urge President El-Sisi to take real action towards protecting minority groups in Egypt. Religious freedom is a core tenet of democracy and should therefore be central to U.S. foreign policy. This is why my colleagues and I on the Congressional International Religious Freedom Caucus will continue to work together to promote religious freedom in U.S. policy. As Egypt struggles to fight to secure democratic values in their society, it is crucial that Egyptians demand their institutions be inclusive of all communities in Egypt. The United States must also communicate to President El-Sisi the necessity of inclusion for a functioning and prosperous democracy. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I will continue to work with my colleagues to fight for policies that protect religious freedom globally. Please know that I will continue to fight for the rights of Coptic Christians, not just in Egypt, but around the world. Thank you very much for inviting me.
We are now pleased to have with us a very special friend of the Coptic community, Congressman French Hill, from the great state of Arkansas. A ninth-generation Arkansan, French Hill has served Central Arkansas in the U.S. House of Representatives since January 3rd, 2015. He is the Majority Whip on the Committee on Financial Services. For the 2 decades prior to his congressional service, Mr. Hill was actively engaged in the Arkansas business community as a commercial banker and investment manager, and founder and chief executive officer of Delta Trust and Banking Corporation. Prior to his community banking work in Arkansas, Mr. Hill served as a senior official in the administration of President George H.W. Bush. From 1989 until 1991, Mr. Hill served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Corporate Finance. And in 1991, at the age of 34, President Bush appointed Mr. Hill to be Executive Secretary to the President's Economic Policy Council, where he coordinated all White House economic policy. Mr. Hill is a magna cum laude graduate in economics from Vanderbilt University. He's married to former Martha McKenzie of Dallas, Texas, and they have a beautiful daughter, Sarah Elizabeth McKenzie Hill, and a son, William Payne Hill, and they reside in Little Rock, Arkansas. Please help me welcome Congressman Hill.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you. It's been a remarkable year, as it was exactly a year ago today that I introduced the House resolution in support of our cops. It's garnered diverse and bipartisan support over that past year. We have 41 co-sponsors, including 13 members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. 16 Democrats, including original co-sponsors, my friend Carolyn Maloney from New York, Brad Sherman from California, David Cicilline from Rhode Island, both members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And 25 Democrats, including original co-sponsors, Dave Trott, from whom you just heard, and very importantly, the Middle East Subcommittee Chair, Ileana Ross-Layton from Florida. While I'm pleased with the support from these members that I've received, I've also been successful in persuading more than one member to be open-minded on this issue. I stress to our members in the House that this resolution in support of our Coptic Christians in Egypt is not an attack on President El-Sisi. I acknowledge and support our partnership and friendship with Egypt, but there can always be more done in the area of protecting religious freedom and human rights. I've received tremendous support from this organization, and I welcome not only meeting with you annually here in Washington, but I want to thank my friend Dr. Gurgis in Dallas for the hospitality that I received in North Texas. Since introducing the resolution, I've met with the Egyptian Embassy, the charge d'affaires of the Egyptian Embassy, and a number of officials from Egypt. I've had the opportunity to meet with members of the Egyptian Parliament, including a member of Parliament who is a Coptic. And my staff has met with the Egyptian embassy staff many times over the past year. Egypt and the United States are important partners in the fight against terrorism in the region. Egypt's role in the Camp David Accords has led to some of the closest ties between the U.S., Egypt, and Israel for 3 decades. Who would think that Egypt and Israel would ever partner together to fight terrorism in Sinai or attempt to be the arbiters in Gaza? And I have great respect for President El-Sisi, someone I've had the opportunity to meet with on a couple of occasions, and the changes in message that he's delivered in the importance of religious tolerance are very important parts of this story. He continues to say and do right things at the top level of government. Having a good relationship with the Coptic Pope, attending Mass on multiple occasions, getting some churches reconstructed, holding terrorists accountable for their atrocities. In my meetings with the Egyptian government, I continue to emphasize El-Sisi's message has been the right one, but the message doesn't trickle down to the rural areas of Egypt, where attacks against Christians are the most prevalent and the most violent. I continue to press this same message with the United States government. In December, along with Ileana Ross-Layton, Ted Deutsch, Dave Cicilline, and 71 other members of the House, we wrote Vice President Pence before his visit to Egypt, asking that in any meetings with the Egyptian government, he address the protection of religious freedom and human rights. And most recently, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to spend time with former House member, Senator, and former Governor of Kansas, Sam Brownback, our new Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom at the Department of State. He too shares my view that this is an important aspect of what we're doing in our bilateral relationship with Egypt and the important role Egypt plays in the region. And if Egypt focuses on the protection of religious minorities, then its role in the region and the world can only grow. I've also received support from outside organizations and governments. In a phone call in the recent months with former UK Ambassador to Egypt, John Cassett, we discussed the issue of religious freedom in Egypt. and the helpful ways the British government is engaging in all areas of education reform, one of which is absolutely the foundation of removing intolerance in the education system in Egypt of Christians. I've also received a supportive letter from the Papal Nuncio here in Washington, Archbishop Pierre. In that letter, he states, certainly agrees that Egypt plays an important geopolitical role in the Middle East, and so an Egyptian government which respects religious and other personal freedoms is therefore a more stable and greatly to be desired. And finally, the Hungarian government has taken the initiative in the Levant and is a capable partner with the United States in protecting Christianity in the Middle East and aiding in the post-ISIS recovery across the broader spectrum of the Middle East. I commend them for their sponsoring the rebuilding of a Christian village in northern Iraq and resettling its Christian population that had been decimated by the barbarians of ISIS. Earlier this year, Ambassador Sabo brought an exhibit from the Hungarian National Museum in Budapest to their embassy here in Washington. Entitled Cross in the Fire, this exhibit highlights the Christian persecutions across the Middle East. Your heart breaks while viewing the pictures and testimony of the devastation and murder wrought by terrorists across the region, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS, including in that exhibit the bombing at St. Peter and St. Paul's Church in Cairo in 2016. However, by the end of the exhibit, you see some of those displaced Christian communities starting to rebuild, resettle, starting their life anew, and like the churches being rebuilt, green shoots of renewal are appearing across a troubled region. And there's no stronger sign of hope than the birth of a child. And I was heartened by the pictures of the families baptizing their young ones, the first baptism in a church in the Levant in many years. So today, as we celebrate 6 months of hard work on this resolution and a year since we assembled last June to talk about it, this day feels like our work is just beginning. We need your support to continue to build support across the Congress and in the administration and in the United States Senate for our resolution. I'll continue to engage with the U.S. government, our partners and other governments, and those groups like Coptic Solidarity that continue to speak out against the plight of intolerance and fear that many Christians around the world face on a daily basis. As President Reagan said, respect for human rights is not social work. It's merely an act of compassion. It is the first obligation of government and the source of its legitimacy. The respect for human rights and religious freedom is an American issue and one I'm honored to champion as I champion this issue on behalf of Coptic Christians in Egypt. Thanks for inviting me today and glad to be here.
It is my distinct honor and pleasure to present Congressman Hill with Coptic Solidarity's annual leadership award. I have met the congressman in March 2017, and it has been a wonderful relationship. His support for the Coptic community is unwavering. This support is translated from just mere words into actual action. The congressman has proved himself to be a steadfast supporter of the Copts and a good friend of Egypt, I must add. Criticizing or nudging Egypt to do what is right is not actually being oppositional to Egypt. We appreciate his support. His resolution, through his persistent work and perseverance, has garnered now, I used to be told 40, now it's 41, sponsored for his resolution, calling on Egypt or expressing concern over the attacks on the Coptic Christians in Egypt. It was a pleasure to present you with our This is the icon of the 21 Coptic martyrs who were killed on the shores of Libya. It's a symbolic icon of what the Copts are going through. Can we have a picture with members of the board? Okay. Members of our board can come up. We can get a group picture. Adel.
Excuse me. All right, one moment.
Who's the first camera? Here we go.
Thank you.
All right, one right here.
Thank you all very much.
Are you in charge of this event? Oh, you are? Okay, so I'm with Congressman French Hill. It's like, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. I just couldn't get like the best shots.
No problem. I think that's a really good one.
All right, thank you. So, actually,
Should we do it outside?
Okay, just moving along. Our next speaker is Congressman Jim McGovern. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 1996 and represents the 2nd District of Massachusetts, right? In 2001, Jim was appointed to a seat on the powerful House Rules Committee, the Traffic Congress, which sets the terms for debate on most legislation. Jim is now the ranking member of the Rules Committee. He is also the co-chair of the bipartisan Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, which investigates international human rights abuses and recommends how the U.S. should foster respect for democratic values abroad. In his role, he has held a spotlight to egregious international human rights violations that would have otherwise have gone largely unnoticed. In 2012, Jim authored the Sergei Magnitsky Rule of Law Accountability Act, which allows the president to punish foreign officials who the United States identifies as corrupt or human rights abusers. The bill was passed by the Senate later that year and signed into law by President Obama. Jim attended the American University in Washington, D.C., where he earned his bachelor's degree in history in 1981 and his master's in public administration in 1984. He worked his way through college as an intern in the office of Senator George McGovern. Jim is married to Lisa Murray McGovern and has 2 children, Patrick and Molly. Please help me welcome Congressman Jim McGovern.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I probably should kind of, so there's no confusion, because a lot of people, when they hear that I work for George McGovern, think that I'm his son. So people always come up to me and say, I was always a big supporter of your dad's. And they always seem a little shocked when I say, thank you, my dad owns a liquor store in Massachusetts, and I hope you keep on supporting him. So but I want to thank the Coptic Solidarity. I want to say thank you to Coptic Solidarity for the invitation to join you today, and congratulations on successfully organizing your 9th annual conference. You know, a year ago, when I spoke at your 8th annual conference, everyone's attention was taken up by the string of suicide bombings in churches that killed or injured nearly 250 people, and the May 2017 attack on a busload of Coptic pilgrims on their way to Samuel Monastery. This year, it seems there have been fewer deaths in the Coptic community, and I'm grateful for that. But we are still called upon to remember Father Saman Shahara, the Coptic priest stabbed to death in Cairo, and the 11 civilians and a policeman killed when ISIS militants opened fire on the Helwan Church last December. And we remember Coptic victims. And as we remember Coptic victims, we must also remember others who suffered religiously motivated violence in Egypt last year, including more than 400 Sufi Muslims killed or injured when ISIS-linked militants attacked their mosque in Sinai in November. The death of even one person due to religious persecution, the death of only one person due to religious persecution diminishes us all. You know, the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, which I co-chair along with Congressman Randy Hultgren, held a hearing on human rights violations in Egypt, including religious persecution, last fall. As often happens, that hearing was controversial. Some people thought we did not give the Egyptian government enough credit for its efforts to improve in some areas. But here's the thing. Even though Article 64 of the Egyptian Constitution says that, and I quote, freedom of belief is an absolute, end quote, many discriminatory laws and practices clearly remain in place. There are lots of opportunities for authorities to use the law to disadvantage religious minorities, including Coptic Christians. A year ago, you were focused on the need to prevent deadly violence by combating the culture of intolerance and hate embedded in Egyptian society and the government. I supported your calls for prevention then, and I still do. What I would like to add today is the need to take on the legal framework in Egypt that facilitates discrimination. A good place to start would be to overturn Article 98F of the Penal Code, the blasphemy law. People should not be prosecuted or imprisoned because their beliefs deviate from the mainstream. It also seems pretty clear that the law that regulates the construction and renovation of churches, although it's recent, already needs to be reviewed. According to USERF's latest report, very few churches have been licensed under the law, and even fewer have obtained construction permits. Whatever the intent, in practice, the law is not working. And then there is the issue of impunity. Those who carry out sectarian attacks continue to go largely unpunished. The practice of customary reconciliation is not a substitute for the rule of law. My point is this. I appreciate it when President Sisi publicly recognizes that there is religious diversity in Egypt. And I hope that the revision of school curriculum that is underway will in fact remove material that promotes extremist ideology. But we need more. You need more. It's not enough for the Constitution to guarantee freedom of belief if the law institutionalizes discrimination. I think increasingly, as we look around the world, we are realizing that institutionalized discrimination is deadly. Prevention means putting an end to legally sanctioned discrimination. What President Sisi says is important. What he does and what he urges the Parliament to do is more so. I, for one, will be focused on his actions, on whether or not he takes concrete steps to change laws and practices in ways that reflect respect and tolerance for a difference, and to promote and protect human rights and dignity of all Egyptians. And I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for coming to Washington on a regular basis and keeping these issues in the forefront. It is important because I've always felt that if the United States of America stands for anything, we need to stand out loud and foursquare for human rights. And so you honor me by inviting me here today, and I wish you a good conference. Thank you so much.
The picture the Coptic Solidarity board members took with Congressman Hill, you had a streak of light across your faces from the PowerPoint, so we're going to ask you to repeat it. So if everybody can come out here again, come up here, we're going to bring Congressman Hill back. Yeah, I don't know who can do it.
you like. Samir.
Here comes the most important thing. We need the other.
I turned off the projector if you want to move it.
Oh, we're working.
Everyone
We're gonna share the photo.
One really like. One more. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, ready? 1, 2.
Right here.
Hope the day goes well.